Hey guys, so I was originally filming another video and I'm still going to do that video. I was filming my how to master the natural makeup look, but I tried to do that video in natural light and now all of it's gone. It's just the way winter goes around here. So now that I have this really nice base down, I figured I would share with you guys how I would do an eye makeup look. Something a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more smoky, but still keeping in mind my hollow under eyes. This is something I talk about a lot on my channel, how I navigate having hollow under eyes. So I thought that I would show you guys, on one eye and one on the other, what I would do and then what I would not do, and so that you guys might have a better idea of like how that hollowness, how the way you place your eyeshadow can really potentially exaggerate a hollow under eye. Okay, let's first start off with something that I would not do. So for the tutorial, I'm using the Natasha Denona Glam palette, which is quickly becoming like one of my favorite palettes of all time. And by the way, there's obviously no wrong way to do makeup, right? But I'm just speaking to my experience, and with my hollow under eyes, I have found these, these specific methods that have not worked for my hollow under eyes. So one thing that I've noticed does not work well is not taking the crease shade high enough. For my eye shape in specific, I have a decent amount of lid space, and I like to use up as much of it as possible, and I like to almost exaggerate my lid space in an effort of taking away from the under eyes. So if I was not taking advantage of my lid space, then I would just take the product into the crease, possibly, and we'll get into this, would possibly take it a little bit further in rather than stopping here, which I would recommend. From here inwards, I would not take any eyeshadow there, period. And I'll explain why. But yeah, I would just add the crease color like this, and then I would call it a day. But if I was taking into account my hollows, this is what I would do. I'm going to take it right above the crease, and I'm really going to blend this out nearly up into the arch of my brow. My brow that is definitely not done yet. So I would really take it up here, and this is almost going to give us a bit of a lift. You can see already. Which eye looks more awake to you? It's subtle, but I think that's something that is quickly becoming my motto, is that makeup is about all the subtleties put together. It's a subtle difference for sure, but I think that overall it will make an impact. And by the way, if you guys want to know how I do conceal the hollows under my eyes in general, I do have a whole video on that, so I will leave that down below. This is what I'm doing. I'm focusing on this outer corner of the crease up here, right into that arch, and I'm exaggerating that space as much as I can. I have not taken any product in here at all. That has remained untouched. And if I get a little bit on the lid, that's fine. We're gonna take care of that. I mean, you can see there's nothing wrong with this. This looks fine. But there's just kind of a lift that's happening here that I think when you have hollow under eyes, it's kind of nice to have it. At least that's what I found. So next, what I would do if I was not taking into consideration my hollow under eyes, that I would start to place a bit of color onto the outer eye. So I'm going to go in with this kind of smoky brown shade, and I would place it on the outer corner, in a very typical way. What I would do is kind of keep it almost in like a circular way out here. And what this is going to do is really kind of round out the eye when you take the shadow and just kind of focus it right in here for a more, rounded eye look. Again, there's nothing wrong with it, but you'll see the way that I typically do my eyes out here and just the difference that it makes for a hollow under eye. Blend it out. You can see I have just a very typical eye look. Blend out these edges a little bit more. I've got some nice definition, and just in general, the shape, that definition is just becoming more of a rounded kind of definition. Whereas what I think actually works better is going with a little bit of a different shape. Now, this is really going to be dependent on what your eye shape is. There's definitely some, subjectivity and adjustments that you guys are going to have to make. For me, I think a little bit more of an angular look, to me, does a better job of lifting the eye. And let me show you what I mean, because I feel like it might be easier to show you than to tell you. So what I would do is take that defining shade onto the outer corners, and I would create almost like, that triangle. What this is doing is just creating a little bit more of an angular look that I think is less likely to match up with the look of a hollow. So that hollow is very circular. And when we repeat that kind of circular look on the lids, I find that it kind of, they kind of mimic each other. And if you notice one, you might tend to notice the other one. But when I create something a little bit more angular, I want you guys to just notice the difference on this eye comparatively. So I'm just going for very simple look. I mean, I'm not using any more or less eyeshadow over here. Do you notice? I mean, am I crazy? This to me, even though I even took that darker shade a little bit under the lash line, I didn't here at all. Even aside from that, this to me does a better job of lifting the eye rather than mimicking those circular kind of hollow shapes that we already have going. I've never talked about these things with literally anyone. It's just things that I've naturally learned to do just because of, the way my face is. And by the way, this is off topic. If I didn't already mention this before, I am kind of obsessed with this eyeshadow palette, the Natasha Denona Glam Palette. Like, these mattes are absolutely incredible. If you were thinking about getting the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes palette, this is just as freaking pretty, you guys. And the formulas are beyond that palette. Anyway, so next let's talk about like the lids themselves. You know what? Let's do a little bit of a smokier lid shade because I want to be able to show you guys that you don't have to steer away from a smoky shade all over the lids. It's just, for me, it's more about placement than color necessarily. Obviously, a light, bright color really helps to open up the eyes, but I just want to kind of give you guys a look into my world. So, something that would immediately close off my eyes is if I took this absolutely beautiful shade and I put it all over the lid, and I decided to take it onto the entire lid, including this little inner corner. Now, I'm not even exaggerating here. I'm not taking it onto the inner corner. I'm just taking it onto the entire space of my lid. And what you're gonna see here, I'm actually gonna take my finger just because I want more impact. Ugh, the color is beautiful. But what I would do is take that all the way in, so that all of a sudden we have no light and bright space on the top of our lid anymore. And what we've immediately done is like closed off our eyes. Do you see how, I mean, we have not a spot of makeup on the lash line, but do you see how immediately it looks like I do? It's much more deep set looking, in my opinion. But watch this. Again, you can still use a smoky shade all over the lid. Just watch the way I do it. I take it onto the lid, and it's not going much further onto this inner portion of the lid. All over, beautiful, beautiful. And then just blending these edges. And if you're worried about taking it too much in, try just tapping. I'm gonna take even a little bit more because I want that richness. And then what I would do is take a light shade and just press that right onto the inner portion of that lid color. This is even like a touch darker than my natural skin tone, and a touch cooler. You can see over here, we're just looking more lifted, more awake, but it's still a smoky eye. And over here, there's just this roundness, this just a little bit of more of a hollow look, in my opinion. And if for some reason this feels a little bit bare, I know that I'm sure it feels a little bit bare to some people if you're used to, you know, having a shade all the way in here. Decide instead maybe to take just a very light and bright shimmer and put it right in that spot. I do it all the time. If it feels a little bit bare to you, you can definitely do that. Next, let's talk about this lower lash line. Ugh, I don't even remember the last time I've done this, but if I was not concerned with my hollow under eyes, I would take a smoky shade and I would apply it right here. Of course, I would always, I mean, no matter what, I'm always going to really pack it on this outer V. And look, even then, I feel like that just lifted and made my hollows a little bit less noticeable. But you can see if I take this darker shade and really blend it, even if it's just the residual on the brush, blend it all across the entire lash line, not even taking it into the inner corner. Though the eyes do have this kind of cool, sleepy, slept-in look, which, I mean, again, I think it's cool. But, you know, when I'm keeping this in mind, that's not what I want. Immediately, I'm like, dang, that hollow. But over here, I'm like, not thinking about it. So what I would do is take this smoky shade, focus it out here, and you know, I still want my eyes to look big. So I'm not going to be afraid to put it on the lower lash line. I am certainly not taking it past here, past the middle of the eye. All of that, not touching it. The proof is in the pudding, my people. And I could go darker with it. I mean, I love a smoky winged look out here. And even when I go smoky with this, as long as I'm keeping it out here and not taking it too far in, I mean, I'm still getting a really nice look. And I think the same thing goes when you're talking about smoking out the top of the lid. If I want to add a little bit of shadow, just wiggling that onto the base of the lash, taking a little bit onto the lid. If I wasn't really concerned, I could just take it all the way, and listen, I'm not even going to go past here, but I would take it all across the lid. And I just find that for me personally, it's creating that roundness that I was talking about. What I would do instead is, again, focus on this kind of winged effect that we have going, and then just kind of drag it a little bit onto the lid. But we're not really packing on any color. We're just like, okay, we're gonna just focus a little bit over here, but we're not really stamping that color on. We're going for just a more subtle, defined look right here. Oftentimes now what I'll do is take a little bit of a shimmer right above the pupil, but a little bit, just a touch closer to the outer edge of the eye. I'll add a little bit of shimmer. And I find that this really helps to, like, you know, just brighten the eye. I am kind of regretting going with that specific shimmer. We'll ignore that though. Typically this is something that you would think that, well, a light shimmer is really going to open up the eye, but I think it's just as much about the shade as it is about the placement itself. I personally find if I already have a dark shade that's going all the way in here, this isn't gonna help a ton to really brighten back up the eye. See, if I just add this, I'm like, oh, it's nice and light and bright. You see, we already have this darkness, and that's why I feel like a halo eye doesn't really necessarily work well for hollow under eyes. You know, it's added a little bit of lightness and brightness, but it's almost exaggerated this kind of circular, hollow look. I'm going to quickly do my brows, and then let's talk about eyeliner and mascara. Okay, so I'm going to use, honestly, a product that I've only ever used once before this, so. But it is an eyeliner from Victoria Beckham Beauty. It is the Satin Kajal in the shade Cocoa. and it's a freaking beautiful color, you guys. So let's talk about the waterline, guys. Adding eyeliner to the lower lash line, the waterline, something that I normally try to stay away from. By the way, I again want to stress that this is just the techniques that I use. I want you guys to just do whatever makes you feel beautiful and happy. You know, that's the goal. But I would typically never do this on my waterline. Even if I'm just doing the waterline itself and not adding any liner to the lid. Of course, there's always exceptions, but I personally find that though this looks really like grungy and cool, like, I mean, I gotta be honest, I really don't have a problem with this. I think it looks kind of sick, if I'm being honest. I'm gonna take a little bit of that excess and put it on right up against the lash line, just a touch, just so it just looks, you know, a little bit more balanced. But if I'm really focused on keeping the eyes light, bright, liner on the top and bottom lash line, there's definitely a chance that this look will kind of get in the way of the final goal of, you know, not having those hollows exaggerated. But if I still want to do liner, which I absolutely love liner, I would apply it is, again, the way I would almost do a cat eye. I do a bit of a flick. This liner's so freaking creamy. I would add that flick there, press in the liner a bit, and create just a touch of a wing. I think that a wing is really pretty. And again, when you're focusing on a wing that looks a little bit more elongated rather than like a very super bubbly kind of triangle liner, I think that can tend to, again, just look a little bit more round, potentially kind of emulate that hollow. But these really skinny wings don't do that as much. And even when I take the liner and do line my top waterline, which I like to do, or tight line, I guess is what people actually call it, I won't go past the pupil, but I'll add it. And I can still go smoky without it necessarily looking a little bit droopy. And for mascara, I want to say the cardinal sin, but I don't want to say that. It's not curling your eyelashes. If you have hollow under eyes, please curl your eyelashes. It makes the eyes look way, way more awake. And I am going to curl this side too, just because I want to show you mascara placement. Want to give both eyes like an even playing field as far as the actual, sorry guys, it is mail time here in Baltimore. We're gonna use a mascara I absolutely love on both eyes, Tower 28 Make Waves. How I would apply my mascara if I didn't want a more wide open look is I would get the mascara pretty evenly coated on the entire eye. And you would typically think like, oh, I want an even coat of the mascara for all of the lashes. But for me, that can kind of look unbalanced. I like to finesse. So for example, let's say I'm using a full coat here on the inner portion of my eye onto the rest of the entire eye. Oh my goodness, that dog outside. My dog inside. Do you see how that adds a layer of heaviness on the inner portion of the eye that I don't think necessarily needs to be there? Again, I mean, I think this is a look. It's rocker, it's undone, it has a sexiness to it. And I think that, you know, I would love to do an entire eye look being like embracing the hollow under eyes and just like going all out with it, because I mean, I absolutely think there's beauty in like leaning into it 100%, but I don't always want to do that. And that's also my prerogative too, to like not always want to do that. How I would do my mascara is focus the product onto the outer half of the lashes and then slowly build up a little bit next to the pupil, kind of at like the highest point of the lid. Like you guys can see here, right here is kind of like the highest point of my lid. I'm gonna focus the mascara right there just to add a bit of that volume and that lift right here at the top, the highest point of the lid. And then everything in here, super light. So you can see, it almost looks like the lashes themselves on this side of my eye are longer. Everything looks more lifted here. And I gotta tell you, this is controversial. I'll take a little bit of mascara on this outer corner, but I'm very rarely touching my lower lash line. And I know that that's odd for a lot of people. If I wasn't concerned, I would just go ahead with it. And again, not gonna lie, I really like that too. I like this look, but if I'm just looking at the hollowness, specifically under my eye, I'm just noticing it right away with this eye and not very much over here. All right, guys, and this completed 2 looks. Hopefully this just gives you another resource, another look into the way that I do my eye makeup with my hollow under eyes. I really, really hope that this was helpful for you guys. Again, this isn't the wrong side by any means. That's why I keep saying, like, if I was not concerned with the hollowness under my eyes. I do hope that these tips and tricks were super helpful for you guys. And if you really did appreciate the video, giving this video a thumbs up does help me know that you liked it. But as always, thank you guys so much for being here, and I will see you guys in my next one.